Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at Kulturkampf. In 1871, Germany was now a unified nation and it held its first election as a unified state. However, the results were quite shocking. The Liberal Party came first with the most amount of seats, followed by Zentrum and then the Conservatives. Now, Zentrum is the Catholic Party in English, however, for the rest of the video I will refer to them as Zentrum. Now, this result is quite surprising considering the fact that Bismarck is not a liberal. He is a Prussian landowner, or a Junker, meaning that he's conservative. So this alliance that he had with the Liberals was called the Unnatural Alliance. However, he only was with the Liberals for one reason: to unify Germany. Now, with the Liberals in power, the Reichstag supported over 100 new laws aimed for unity, including the introduction in 1876 of the state bank, the Reichsbank. They also introduced a uniform law for commerce and the abolishment of internal tariffs, and also a single system of weights and measurements, along with much more. However, we mentioned them in the last video, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about those. However, why did Bismarck go after the Catholics? Well, the Catholics were a minority in the empire, making up only 37% of the population, and that was mostly in the southern states, yet they were second place in the Reichstag. And in 1870, Zentrum was established, meaning that they were a relatively new party as well. And in 1871, they had 63 deputies, so that was the number of people they had in the Reichstag. Now, Bismarck needed support from the Protestants, who made up the majority of conservatives and liberals. And also, he hoped by attacking the Catholic Church, that would win him support, as of course Protestants and Catholics, as we know, don't get along. Now, not only this, but the Pope made two sort of laws in 1864 and 1870, resulting in Catholics essentially being told by the Pope that they didn't have to follow the rules of kings and queens, but instead were to only follow the laws set by the Pope. Now, this made Bismarck essentially view the Catholics as dangerous rebels, people who were in an internal movement, something that could threaten the state. So Bismarck began the Kulturkampf in 1871 with action against the church, including labelling Zentrum as Reichsfiender, or enemies of the Reich. Now, I know I keep mentioning the word Reich, and I know that has bad sort of associations with things like the Third Reich. However, if you just literally look at the name Third Reich, there were two Reichs before Hitler's Germany, and these were the Holy Roman Empire as the First Reich, and the German Empire from 1871 to 1918 as the Second Reich. So that is the Reich we're talking about. Now, the Catholic section of Prussian Ministry of Religion and Education was then abolished. Clergy were forbidden to mention politics while preaching, along with a few more laws. Now, these attacks in 1871 were quite large and quite damaging. However, it then picked up again with the May laws in 1873 under Prussian Minister of Religion Adalbert Folck. However, these only applied to Prussia. Some of these laws did eventually go on to apply to the whole empire, but that took a lot longer. So, Catholic education came under state supervision. All Catholic orders were dissolved. State financial aid to the Catholic Church ended, and only those who studied in Germany and passed the state exam could become priests. Priests who were already existing had to retrain and then take the exam as well. Otherwise, they could not preach. Now, later rules then applied, such as in 1874, when the responsibility for registration of births and marriages and deaths was taken over by state. Now, of course, when the Kulturkampf ended, most of these laws were repealed, except for this 1874 one, which, of course, would then go on to sort of apply to the whole world, where governments would take care in doing that. Now, although it was considered to be working, the Catholic Church actually continued to thrive in Germany. The persecution of priests created martyrs, and Ludwig Windhorst soon took over Zentrum, and in 1874 election brought Zentrum to 91 seats, more than they had in the 1871 election. Now, this basically allowed them to threaten all future policies of Bismarck. And so this is when essentially the Kulturkampf goes wrong. So not only this, but Protestants were starting to fear about the Kulturkampf, not because they were Catholic or had any secret Catholic loyalties, but actually because they feared that if Bismarck was going to go after the Catholics, what was then stopping him going after the Protestants or the Jews? It essentially made them fear for their own religious freedoms. And in 1874, a Catholic barrel maker attempted to assassinate Bismarck. Bismarck himself wanted to end the Kulturkampf as he wished to gain an alliance with Catholic Austria, and so he needed the support of the Protestant conservatives, and he also needed the support of Zentrum, of course, as he also felt that socialism was a much greater risk to Germany than the Catholic Church, as we'll mention in the next video with SPD's rise. So he needed to essentially gain Zentrum back on side to deal with socialism. He also wanted to end it for this main reason: the liberals were no longer friendly with Bismarck. You see, the liberals didn't really believe in free trade. They followed more laissez-faire policies with tariffs being in part. So Bismarck wanted to introduce a system of free trade, but the liberals were opposed to it. So he needed the conservatives and Zentrum on side so he could then get around the liberals. So, following a new Pope, Leo XIII, from 1878, taking over from the previous Pope, now this Pope was far more, not radical, but tolerant with other people, especially Bismarck. And so it allowed Bismarck to change his foreign policy and seek reconciliation. He made Falk resign and essentially used him as a scapegoat for all of this problems. And from 1880, the May laws were gradually repealed. Not all of them, though, like I mentioned. Overall, the Kulturkampf did not really impact Bismarck's plans for the future, and in 1879 he did make his alliance with Austria. Not only this, but he was able to abandon the liberals as well and move to the conservatives, essentially bringing sort of natural order back into play. So, like I mentioned, essentially, Kulturkampf was what you could almost call a stain on Bismarck's career, if you'll go there. It wasn't great and it didn't work. However, it really didn't impact Bismarck's future policies. However, it would help to show Bismarck's almost lack of understanding of how to go about the Reichstag. So next video, we will look at Bismarck's war on socialism, and we'll be able to see how essentially he faced the same problems and did not learn from the Kulturkampf. Thank you for watching.